Alrighty, guys, it's 11:15. So by my time, that's when we kick off this regional spotlight. And I do want to welcome our two participants, our two presenter, I should say, Kara Krezek, who is the president. You're still the president, aren't you, Kara? Or are you past president?
No, I'm still president.
Right. Sorry about that. Yeah, we've recently changed our terms of length of term. So Kara is the president of the Cooperative Education and Work Integrated Learning Association of Canada, which is our national association for our work. And we've got Charlene Marion, who's now working at CWIL Canada as one of the director roles, right? Charlene, that's your role?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned in the opening remarks, the purpose of these spotlights is to really shine a light on the amazing network that is part of the World Association. And we couldn't do our work without these various regions that participate and engage, and we have wonderful partnerships with. So we wanted to shine a light on that and provide those regions and networks to talk about the amazing things that are going on in their area. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to the two of you to give this presentation, and I understand there'll be some time for Q&A after. Please go into the session tab, and if you have a question, put it in the chat, and I will try and moderate that. All right, Kara and Charlene, thank you.
Perfect. Wonderful. So welcome everyone. Good morning, afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. So I'm really pleased to be here today with my colleague, Kara Krezek, who is the president of CWIL Canada. And in her real life, she is director of career, cooperative and experiential education at Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario. And I am Charlene Marion. I am the director of work integrated learning for CWIL Canada, who's a full-time staff member. And in my past life, I was an experiential learning lead at Bishop's University in Sherbrooke, Quebec. Before we start today, I would like to acknowledge that the land in which I gather today, and I'm joining you for this conference, is on the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederacy. And I think as we take time to speak about all the wonderful things that we've achieved as CWIL Canada and work integrated learning today, I think it's critical for us, for me, to underline the importance of what I, as a European settler, have come to know about work integrated learning and its long-standing history as a way of knowing, teaching, and learning within First Nations peoples. So I'm grateful for their willingness to share and to continue to share their knowledge while recognizing that I still have much work to do with respect to truth and reconciliation. So Kara and I are starting off today with a very quick overview of who is CWIL and a little bit CWIL at a glance, and then we'll jump into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of what we've been up to in this past year. So CWIL Canada has a vision to lead work integrated learning in Canada, and our mission is building the capacity to develop future-ready students through quality work integrated learning. And what does CWIL look like? If we look at CWIL a couple of years ago, today we're at just under 1,400 members across Canada, over 12 provinces and territories. But a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, we were at 800. So we've seen a significant increase in our membership. We're proud to say that we have 120 member institutions and employer and community and industry partners that join us. We represent 9 forms of work integrated learning through 14 committees and councils. And we couldn't do what we do without our wonderful volunteers who are 200 plus. And now recently, as of February, 6 full-time staff members, which we'll talk to you a little bit more in the future. But of course, all of that coming together to share our one passion for work integrated learning, for quality work integrated learning. So Kara, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. So a little bit more about so you can have an understanding of what we do and how we do it. And as Charlene has highlighted already through some of the numbers, that CWIL is comprised of volunteers primarily up until just recently when we've onboarded staff and support from our association management company. But truly, we get everything done through committees and councils. What we do at CWIL is through a heavy lifting, and as you will see, what we've been able to accomplish over the last few years, our over almost 50 years legacy has always been done for the most part with volunteers. So this is a list of our various committees and councils that we have. We've gone through a variety of bylaw changes in this past year as well. Nora mentioned things such as our terms of for our board members, but also just brought in more voices onto the board that were ex officio before. So, for example, our Quality Assurance Council, as well as our Accreditation Council, and also the employer and community partners. So these are the committees that we work with. So we have a variety, and we'll explain as we go through what these committees have been working on. But as you can see, we are very busy through a committee structure with also some support of our association management company. So next slide, Charlene.
Yeah, sorry, there's a little delay.
That's okay. And then I think you may have to hit, there we go. So we were also already very busy in a variety of ways, doing a lot of impactful work through our committee structure. We had just recently gone through strategic planning sessions. We were all met, the board had met in February in 2020 in Toronto to discuss our action plan for a variety of things. And as we all know, we didn't know at the time that March 13th was looming. I think that those that have heard me speak before regarding the pandemic and what it did to obviously the world, and then also our operations within CWIL. And it was just a very, very quick turn, and our board was well positioned. CWIL was well positioned nationally as the leading organization in work integrated learning, and we were able to very quickly mobilize our volunteers, mobilize our board, and work with our community partners to respond to CWIL, and truly, as you'll see, to respond to the pandemic, and you will see the ecosystem that we built and how there were certain things that we knew that we needed to do that shone a light on them. There are new things we needed to do, but I think truly it was because of our foundation that we have in Canada that allowed us to be able to help the landscape with student experiences. And this is a little bit about our story. So our year and a bit in review, and everything that you see on the slides is that is highlighted in blue was specific to the pandemic. The pieces that are still in black, you will see that those were things that were excuse me, already were underway or were foundational work of CWIL that either sped up but wasn't necessarily directly related to the pandemic itself. So very quickly, on March 13th, we received a call from one of our employer partners, and the conversation was, what are we going to do with all of these students that we have coming to work for us? Should we cancel our work experiences this summer? And CWIL's response was, please no, do not do that. And instead, we very quickly, as an organization, came up with some guidelines regarding the delaying work terms to June 1st as opposed to May 1st, especially for our very structured co-op experiences. And then also asking employers and community partners to allow students to work from home. We very quickly created resources. We called it Will From Home. We had a national campaign about Will From Home. We also looked at we worked over the weekend, and those of you that know Christine Dawson and Anne-Marie Fannin, myself, we were on the phone with the government over the weekend and just worked with them to help provide some flexibility, some understanding of what flexibility measures we would need as a country to continue to support work integrated learning experiences. And we did a lot of advocacy and just working side by side with the government about some of these flexible resources for our student work placement program, which has been ongoing in Canada for the last few years, and really advocating with the government over the next few months to create some flexibility that included allowing institutions to hire students, as well as not requiring a net new, which was one of the stipulations that the government had put on. So there was a variety of flexibility measures that CWIL worked with the government directly on to help continue to support work integrated learning experiences across the country. We also worked with immigration regarding work permit processing, and as we weren't allowed to take international students as a country, what was that meaning for those students that were here, backlogs in work permit processing. So we've done some work there and working with other associations to co-advocate alongside. And then also, I'm just going to jump to the other blue one at the bottom there just for a moment about access to technology. One of the other advocacy points that we were really hoping that the government would pick up was regarding the discrepancies of students being able to access the variety of online experiences. And we're trying to get some resources for students when it came to technology. We all continue to do other government advocacy regarding unpaid guidelines, internship guidelines. There was some publications regarding that, and also international student eligibility. We continue to work with the federal government and advocate for the international students to be able to access the government programs, although we haven't gotten as far as we would like on that. Communications wise, we brought on a new association management platform that is allowing us to engage with members in a new way. We have a new website. We've launched a new newsletter. We've created a directors and managers group for our employer partners and community partners, as well as we've had that group for our educator partners for a while. We have also had a very strong focus on including our bilingual. In Canada, we are a national association, so to communicate with our members in both official languages in French and English. We publish stories of inspiration and success that was really highlighting the ways that our institutional members were responding to the pandemic. And you can find those on our website. It was around innovation and stories of care, success, and a variety of national publications and media have picked those up in different ways as we try to paint the picture of how we've responded to the pandemic. Which also talks about the way we originally during the pandemic were hosting, I think twice a week town halls, and then we started doing once a week, then every second week, and now we have been doing them monthly. And for the majority of this time, we have included everybody. They did not need to be a member of CWIL, but anybody in the WIL ecosystem that wanted to learn about what we were doing. And lastly, we and it's in somewhere else too, that we were celebrating our national month of co-op and work integrated learning, and we had launched our first ever National Day of WIL, which Charlene will talk about in a bit. We also did a CWIL call to action as it pertains to equity, diversity, and inclusion. As the Black Lives Matter movement was happening in North America over the summer, we really wanted to ensure that we were going to do something at CWIL. And so we did a call to action, which are a variety of points as it pertains to equity, diversity, and inclusion within the systems within CWIL itself. We have created a committee and are just working through, it's interesting with the committee itself as we are working through to create a committee with systems and barriers that within the organization itself also create barriers. So we are working through that right now, but our call to action is on our website and we are working through those pieces. Next slide. Charlene. We are also working with membership engagement. So I talked about a bit about the open town halls. We have opened up the CWIL Zoom line to coffee chats. Whenever somebody has something to chat about, they can throw it out there and use our line. We continue to use 10,000 Coffees, which is a technology platform here in Canada that connects our members together to have informal discussions around various topics that they want to talk about. The LinkedIn group was actually quite funny because just before the pandemic, there was, as we started to hear rumblings of what was happening, people wanted to be sharing, and we were a little bit worried about creating a social media group that we didn't know how we were going to manage as a volunteer association. And then the pandemic hit us and we just opened the LinkedIn group and let it go. So it required us to be a lot more flexible and adaptable to the situation. So we do have a LinkedIn group that anybody can join as well. We've also had LinkedIn Learning access for our during our WIL month, Co-op and WIL month for all of our members. We've engaging members through our newsletter, and through that we have a spotlight on CWIL members that we're trying to get our members to get to know each other. We had to run a virtual AGM, which we will be doing again this October, and included our new bylaws and new positions on the board at that point. Our Quality Council has been reviewing the definition of WIL and the subcategories, and the Accreditation Council continues to do the amazing work with the volunteers they do. They've looked at entrepreneurial WIL and created some guidelines there. And truly, they have been also a stabilizing committee also for, I think, in a lot of ways during the pandemic, that people knew that their accreditation was not going to be at risk because of flexibility measures they needed to put in place, such as shortened work terms as a result of the pandemic. And we also have ramped up our research over the last year. We had increased our CWIL research grants just the year before. But we've also looked at the research that's being done. We were going to have a research stream within our conference that we had to cancel, but we've looked at other ways to make sure that that's highlighted. We're also including a Canadian edition of the International Journal for Work Integrated Learning. We are publishing a collection of Canadian research, and there is a special edition that we're contributing to with the IJWIL. Data, we have, thanks to the Work Learn Institute at Waterloo and Judine, who has continued to support CWIL in collecting and collating and distributing pulse data. So we have been collecting data every month since March 2020 on how the pandemic is affecting our stakeholders in a variety of ways, and that data continues to show where we have been, where we are going through the pandemic, and we are really thankful to have that. It's helped us with a lot with our advocacy to the government and also institutions within their own organizations. We continue to house the co-op database, and we are continuing to look at different ways to expand that to all types of WIL. And we are currently in the process of creating a national work integrated learning directory. I know I'm going through a lot of this fast, but we have created a variety of resources, and we are in the process of creating a certification in Canada for a WIL practitioner. We're creating EDI resources, employer resources, and a variety of practitioner information. We've helped with resources around WIL from home and virtual career fairs. And all of this has also created a lot of professional development for our membership. We've looked at alternative delivery of WIL. We've done the research series, an EDI series, and the professional development committee had responded very quickly to a variety of challenges that we've faced over the last year. And lastly, we'll get into a little bit more detail about our iHub. We had been working for the last few years on working with the government to use CWIL as a way to create amazing work integrated learning experiences through our members. And in the late summer, We applied for a funding pot and found out on January, beginning of January, that we had received a substantial grant from the government to create the iHub. And this has been done because of the great amount of work that CWIL has been doing over the years. And I'm going to pass it to Charlene to talk about the iHub.
Thanks, Kara. So the CWIL iHub came into existence with a lot of hard work from Kara, from Anne, from Christine and Matt, and really building up the application and getting it out there. And we were very fortunate in early January to receive 16.3 million confirmation of funding from the Government of Canada through its Innovative Work Integrated Learning, or IWIL initiative. And what the CWIL iHub aims to do is support 8,150 IWIL experiences for Canadian post-secondary students through funding through post-secondary institutions to get it to the students themselves. It also looks at an industry and community partner contribution of 20% for the projects, both in direct and in kind. And the spirit of the funding is really focused on the direct benefit of the students. So enabling students to get additional support for their work integrated learning experiences. And so what is the iHub? The Innovation Hub is really about it being a center of expertise where we provide grant-based funding to promote quality and curricular work integrated learning, where we prioritize applied research projects, eWIL, field placements, and service learning, as well as some other forms of work integrated learning. And beyond that, we're also looking at becoming a hub for best practices around innovative work integrated learning. And we'll be excited in the second half of our mandate to bring together resources, best practices, and highlighting case studies of these IWIL opportunities that are happening in Canada. And so what's the main goal of supporting IWIL? And we're addressing, here are the main outcomes, or the key outcomes that we're looking at. We're looking at expanding access to WIL opportunities with a particular focus on underrepresented students. We're looking at removing barriers for students to be able to participate. So anything around fees that they have to pay or costs that are incurred for their WIL experiences. Enhancing through technology. We've all seen that technology has become so important in a COVID-19 world. So allowing students to be able to leverage technology in interesting ways. And finally, building and supporting new partnerships and new models for curricular WIL in Canada. And so, as Kara alluded to, things happened pretty rapidly, and I joined the team officially in early February as the Director of Work Integrated Learning, predominantly overseeing iHub operations, but also some CWIL proper pieces as well. But over the course and into early April, we have been able to onboard an Associate Director of Operations, 4 regional associate directors who are covering the various areas highlighted on the map that you see. We are in the process of hiring a WIL student for the summer, as well as additional WIL students in the fall term. And we also work very closely and receive support from our association management company, Redstone, where we have support through our contracts and administrative person, as well as someone who's overseeing and supporting us with our finances. So we have a full-time team dedicated to iHub that is of 6, as well as support from WIL students and our association management company. And Kara talked a whole lot about, there's a lot to celebrate with CWIL this year, and our National Co-op and WIL Month was our second one, but we really kind of say it's our first because it got interrupted halfway through with COVID, so we had to pivot rather quickly and change the focus a little bit. We also established the National Day of WIL, which is the 4th Wednesday in March. And we also had the opportunity, like we do every year, to highlight 4 exceptional co-op and WIL students from across Canada as our co-op and WIL students of the year, as you see below. And we were also able to really underline and celebrate the volunteer contributions. The board took the opportunity to highlight every single CWIL volunteer this year in a special way, because as Kara mentioned, our association is foundationally built on the enormous support and the enormous energy that is our volunteer base. And so I'm cognizant of time, but I will, if it is shared, I'll share the link in our chat. But we did on our National Day of WIL, able to share with students and practice across the country what WIL meant to them. If there's time, I see that we're short on time, so I will put it in the chat if anyone's interested, or they can also see it on our social media channels. And I'll hand it back to Kara.
So just to kind of go, like, where are we going forward? We're really looking at, we have a strategic plan, but it continues to be a breathing, living document. The board is getting together at the beginning of June to look at our strategic plan, having a EDI lens on our operations, and also our strategic plan, which is one of our call to actions, but just ensuring that our strategic plan continues to support the organization as we continue to move through this very extraordinary time in our history. So we'll be getting together for that and looking at really what is the sustainability of our organization to continue to provide the services and value that our members see. We will have a new president, Matt Rempel will be coming in October, and we'll be calling for elections shortly for our board members. We're doing some great things around rank and match conversations, and truly just working with our employer partners for everybody to understand why we do the things that we do and continue to strengthen that WIL ecosystem. We're looking at continuing to engage our, almost 1,400 members and how we engage them in a variety of ways. We will continue to do government advocacy. We do that alongside a lot of other associations in Canada. And we've been looked at as a valuable resource. And we continue to partner to make sure that the voice of our members that have the work integrated learning as a passion of theirs at the heart of what we do. Sorry, I knew my dog was going to bark at some point during this. We're looking at official partnerships. We're creating some official partnerships with a variety of our partners. We've been doing a lot of what we do through volunteer work. So we are looking at ways to sustain that work through official partnerships. And as we all know, data is continuing to be a very large conversation, and we're continuing to look at how we can best support our members and our advocacy efforts through data. I think, next slide.
And that's it.
Perfect. So that is what we've been up to in CWIL for the last year and a bit, and happy to take questions.
Well, that was lovely. Wonderful overview, Kara and Charlene. And just such a testimony to the, as you mentioned, the many, many volunteers, now the staff, and lots of dedication from the community, CWIL community over the years. I have a couple of questions, but unless there are any that people would like to ask, please feel free to join the session with your video and audio if you wish, or put a chat into the chat for the session. So while we're waiting for that, one of the tremendous successes that you touched upon were some of the funding that's come the way of WIL, so that employers can receive subsidies, and there's opportunity for funding innovative programs such as through the iHub. People may not realize the extent of that funding, Kara, people who aren't familiar with the Canadian context. So for example, the Student Work Placement Program, the SWIP program, I think that's top $600 million that the Government of Canada has put into that to provide wage subsidies for students Will students who were hired. And also there's the IHAB money that you mentioned, 16 million into that. There's also new budget for a program called My Tax, an additional $700 million. Again, that will be going to students doing a variety of different kinds of experiences. CWIL has been very successful, both in advocating for that money and, as you mentioned, advocating for some flexibility with respect to those programs as a result of COVID. Any keys to your success you'd like to talk about? That there may be others in the audience who are looking to advocate to their governments. What do you think worked really well, Kara, and that helped with your messaging?
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to Anne's time as well as president, and she really kind of started to dig into those relationships and looking at who those key decision makers were within the government. We did hit a barrier very quickly because at the time we were CAFKE, and the government saw us as just the barrier was they saw us as co-op. And one of, I think, the pieces that allowed us, not only just through advocacy of relationship building, through relationship building first, but also to explain who we were, that although our name said co-op, that through some data that we had collected, that we represented a much broader, group of people, but then we also changed the association to include the work integrated learning more holistically. I think the other piece that is really, they started to see the knowledge base we had. And it's been really interesting for me as president to see how the brand of CWIL and how that's attached to quality, but also like just our members and the amount of work that the institutions are doing. So I think that it's been a very, we have a government relations committee, which is chaired both by Christine Dawson and Marie Fannin, and they have done a lot of work about bringing together the WIL ecosystem a lot, and CWIL has taken the charge in this, looking at how we could adapt the WACE global call to action and how we could to do that in a Canadian context, creating conversations. And CWIL was the platform for this to happen. Even I just kind of came off a call with My Tax, for example, and I was talking about how we are this conduit. The government has started to see us as this place that is about advocacy, but also just a trusted advisor. And I think that has really made a difference, but this has been years in the making. So yeah, I hope that helps answer your question, Nora.
Very good. So building relationships and paying attention to those over the years, being very representative of a broad WIL community, demonstrating expertise and knowledge and quality, and then also, as you say, being that conduit for advocates as well as advice. So that's fantastic, Kara. Question has come in here from Jim Steller. How does the federal and provincial government help get the word out to employers to sustain and increase WIL experiences for students? Any comments on that?
I would say this is part of the ecosystem, James, that I don't know if they help get the word out, but they look to see what are the avenues that we can get the word out to employers. So one of the things that we're working with at CWIL that we've brought in that has been funded through a government partnership is a partnerships person that is working on employer resources, that is working on creating ways for employers to understand the various types of WIL, to look at how they can engage with it, because the very traditional types, they understand or they lump it all into one. So we're looking at ways that we can use government funding to create resources for employer and community partners, and looking at it really from a needs-based assessment, so that when employers or community partners are coming to us, we're looking to see what are they trying to achieve, and then we layer on what kind of will help them achieve that. So the funding from the provincial and federal governments have allowed us to tap into resources and also work with a variety of partners across the country. You know, there's a lot of us that are doing this, but it's really trying to have a cohesive effort and voice. And frankly, CWIL's definitions, I know that we can all talk about definitions, but it's helped us does provide a platform as to what we are talking about when we talk about will, which helps the employers and community partners understand what that is as well. I hope that helps answer your question, James.
That's great. So again, Kara, making reference to the benefit of the work that's been done across the country to come up with a common set of definitions and a common understanding of what actually we're talking about here. And so many jurisdictions are working in that space too. So that's really great to shine a light on how important that work is, even if there are moments where it feels slightly aggravating. But it's all good. It's all good. Now, Charlene is mentioning in the chat, tools include short videos, definitions, and how-tos for employer community. Yeah, thanks very much, Charlene. And people can go to the CWIL website and poke around and see some of those resources that have been developed. So I have another question for you, Kara, in the few minutes that's remaining. There may very well be people who are on this event and also watching the recording after the fact who would be very interested to get some advice you might have if they're a region of the world, for example, who doesn't have an association and would like to get one started, or maybe has a very small association and would like to scale it up or strengthen it. So terrific experience, Kara, over the last few years in doing both those things. Well, we've had a Canadian association since the 70s, I think quite a while, but still, strengthening that and scaling that has been a huge part of your efforts. But any bits of advice for someone who might be starting out in this space and what you would suggest, Kara?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Nora. And we get asked this sometimes in our provinces that don't have associations. I think some of the keys are tapping into those that have done this in the past and learning from them, like this, tapping into the through the World Association because of the resources that are there as well. But truly looking at who are your advocates. Who are the people that are passionate about this and bringing them to the table, looking at who will engages and making sure that you have those voices there. And truly, like, I'm a big believer in creating advocates through good work. And that's really where I see the engagement has gone up with CWIL, in not only the types of membership that we have, but also just the number of members. And I think that if you're going to start something anew or looking at scaling up what you have, then you have to also invest and strategically invest in from a resource perspective, financially, but also people. Like, we know that this has taken a lot of people. I said today, I'm sure people are exhausted by my presidency right now. Partly is because I'm an ideas person, but I think truly it's coming together as a group of people who are passionate about this, looking at what resources you have, looking at how you're going to strategically invest in those resources, how you can sustain what you're doing. So I look at different income generation opportunities to look at sustainability, and looking at who needs to be at the who are your influencers that need to be at the table with you, so that they can create more momentum. And then how do you sustain that momentum? I'm going to pass. I see Charlene's unmuted, so I'm also going to pass over to Charlene to see if she wants to add anything.
Well, I think, Kara, one of the main things that we did to increase membership is changing the membership fee structure, right? To make it more accessible and encouraging institutions. So, beyond 20 members, it was a set price. So we can see that now we can engage so many more practitioners at institutions that we wouldn't have otherwise if we were on a per person or per member basis. So I think that really revolutionized the number of members that we were able to build in these past 3 years as well.
And I just will build quickly on that. During the pandemic, we opened our doors to everybody, and that also was really helpful in casting the net wide to anybody who is engaged in the will conversation. And it was, we want you here, we need you here. And then as we start to look towards some type of new normal, new reality, how we continue to engage those that weren't members, but that want to continue to be engaged in the conversation, and what is their perspective on will from the lens they're looking at it. So that's been a really helpful for, I think, the last year.
Excellent. So those are some excellent tips and suggestions for individuals who might be in this space themselves. And thanks very much for mentioning the fact that the World Association can also be a venue for this. Many of us who've worked in our own national associations have learned much from engaging with others who are also leading in national associations and how they've navigated various challenges and different opportunities. So WACE is an opportunity to gather with like-minded people on a global stage to share that kind of information. And we're very, very pleased that you're able to share that with us today. I have one other question. If there isn't any other, I'm just looking at the chat. I don't think I've missed anything here. One thing, Kara, if you could just touch on a little bit more, because Canada is unique in its accreditation for quality co-op programs, one of the forms of WIL. Do you want to talk about that just for a minute and implications for the other forms of WIL and the development of the Quality Improvement Council as a result?
Right. Yes, in a few minutes or less. It's interesting. For those that know, we have an accreditation council that is the accrediting body for cooperative education in Canada, and it is made up of accredited institutions across the country. And the process for becoming accredited for cooperative education includes an application through that committee. There are mentors. There is an entire system that is set up there that has a chair. As we expanded into all types of WIL, I will call it the if that then what or then this moment. So as we continue to look at our expanded mandate, we continue to look at what that meant for CWIL and how we needed to move our operations larger with a bigger scope and things that we didn't even think of that were presented to the board and to committees as we look to an expanded mandate. And I think that we continue to do this work. The momentum is picked up, especially with the iHub. But so this meant, though, that we had an accreditation council for co-op, and then all types of WIL required some type of quality structure. So when we were doing the definitions and the buckets within the types within the definition, that work was being done through a committee of the directors and managers committee back in 2018, I believe, 17, 18. And then we realized as a board that we needed to have some guiding principles for quality for all types of WIL. And that then created a idea of the board to create a council of members that oversee a variety of types of work integrated learning that includes researchers as well as practitioners to help move forward the mandate. And while we know that not everything might fall into an accreditation bucket, we wanted to ensure that at least that there was quality components of it. So we have the Quality Assurance Council, which is overseen by, it rotates between the chair of the quality improvement or the accreditation chair. And basically we have two buckets, the bucket of accreditation that is co-op is the only one that's in there right now. And then the Quality Improvement Council, which is overseeing a variety of quality metrics and markers. We are using the AAA framework that Nora and Nancy, and the PAIR framework that Nora has introduced as ways to continue to keep the quality of work integrated learning at the core of everything that we do, including resources that we build and practitioner information. So there's a lot of work that's being done there. The tasks are big, but they continue to try and eat this elephant one bite at a time.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kara, because the work of accreditation is also very long-standing and very unique in the Canadian context, and many are very interested in that accreditation as it aligns with quality. You've mentioned the AAA quality framework, but there are other quality frameworks in other parts of the world, and how to align these things so that we're all after the same thing, which is fantastic experiences for our students, good learning opportunities, a way to engage learning at a deeper level through work integrated learning. So thank you very much, Kara and Charlene, for that fabulous presentation. really wonderful spotlight. Thank you also for all of the work that you do each and every day to get us to where we are and to be so proud members of CWIL in the Canadian context. Absolutely wonderful work. Thank you very much, Kara and Charlene. At this point, we're coming to the end of day 1, Region A. And I wanted to just wrap up the day by saying thank you to everyone who has participated today, who's engaged in the various sessions, who've reviewed and watched the presentation, who's participated in the Q&As, and who has engaged with others, I'm sure, throughout day 1. It's wonderful to have you here. We are looking forward very much to day 2. Region B starts day 2 actually in 7 hours. And Region A, sorry. Region A starts in 7 hours. Region B, which is this region, will start day 2 in 20 hours. And we look forward to seeing you there at that time. We'll be having more presentations, more Q&A, the chance to learn about the Global Challenge Program with Practira. There will be an opportunity then also to engage in WIL conversations as well as other activities. But I think what we'll do is wrap it up at this point, unless there are any final questions from anybody or any concerns that are points or anything that someone's not clear about. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you and engaging with you on day 2 for Region B. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.